Hi everybody, welcome to this episode of Enlightenment Today. I'm Jason. Today we're going to speak about the ability to just drop it. Now what do I mean by just dropping it? Well, this is the ability to just drop anything emotional that may have happened to you or has lingered in your mind for some time. Any psychological problem that continues to fester within your own mind. Just drop it in the garbage like it ain't no thing. The ability to just drop it and move on and to act as if, or not to act, but to live as if it never existed. Now, without the ability of just dropping it, a lot of people will judge reality in the future according to the past. So for example, if something happened between you and one person where this person was a certain way, say if they were arrogant towards you, and you meet them 5 years down the track, if you still have that perspective of them, is that really the way to approach reality? Is that really how it is? Or should you continually be coming to life with a clean slate? Now in psychology, they think that we should be coming to life with a clean slate where you shouldn't be judging someone from 5 years ago. You think about it this way. If you had a problem with somebody 5 years ago or even yesterday, anything can have happened between that time. So they could have changed, they should have changed immensely from that time, because life is change if we are conscious of our own life. So they are probably going to be a different person by the time you come across them. So if you haven't dropped it, then you're going to meet resistance with them again. There will be conflict. There's no doubt about that. Now this ability to just drop it comes from the great Eastern traditions, especially the non-dual philosophies of the East, especially Vedanta and Mahayana Buddhism, especially the Zen part of Mahayana Buddhism. But it's also part of a dualistic philosophy that we all know as yoga. So they have this concept of just dropping it, this practice of just dropping it, where they train people to just drop it. You know, you'll hear a lot of masters and teachers, someone will come to them with a certain psychological problem and they would say, just drop it. Now the reason they do this is because from a lot of these traditions, there is no person, really, fundamentally. From the Vedanta perspective, the person needs to be dropped. From the Buddhist perspective, there is no person really, so why are you pretending that you have all these problems? And from the yoga perspective, Purusha, pure awareness, sits outside of Prakriti, where the personality is wound up. So if this is really who you are, then you should not be engaged with all of these emotional problems. This is the Eastern perspective. So they would say, you know, why do you hold on to all this emotional baggage that you have? You know, and a lot of us do cling to a lot of our emotional baggage like gold. And we're not conscious of that. You know, every day, something may have happened a year ago, but you're still thinking about it. It's still popping up, burping up into your mind. Is this the way it should be? Or do we need to train our mind with the ability of just being able to drop these certain things? Now, British philosopher Alan Watts, he used this kind of story where he was articulating the attitude of a master. When someone would come to a master with a particular psychological problem, pretending they were this person, the master would say, come off it, Shiva. Stop pretending you're this guy here with all of these problems. So basically what he's saying is the master is saying, come off it, you are Shiva, really. And he's using Shiva as a depiction of Brahman, the absolute Godhead, that we, according to the East, we are all an aspect of, a part of, and deep down we are that within. So he's saying, the master would say, you know, stop pretending you are this person there with all of these problems, because you're not that, you're really Shiva. From the perspective of non-dualism and the dualistic philosophy of yoga, we have become too self-involved, really. And as a result, we believe everything is about us. So these ideas of turning everything into something about us come from modern psychology. You know, these are very Freudian and Jungian ideas where we think everything is about us and so forth and so on. When sometimes someone might just be arrogant towards you and it may not have anything to do with you. You know, you can't take everything on board as if it is your own. This is subtly the ego at its work. You're continually thinking with self-interest and you are constantly on guard. You're emotionally on guard with life. And we need to remember the great hallmark of the ego is constant self-defense. When you're in constant self-defense. So if you think that all of these things are about you, and then you're paranoid and you start to, attack certain people, or you start to think that, well, maybe this is about me and this and that, this can be self-delusion. You need to remember, not every experience is about you, okay? If you realize that not everything is about you, then you can drop everything like a hat. Someone might just be cynical towards you because they are a cynical person. Now, because we think that everything is about us, this is what the ego does. The ego makes us believe that everything is about us. That's how we've been trained in this world. We've been trained to think that every single thing is about us, and we need to be concerned about what everyone says about us, and so forth and so on. We're in constant self-defense when we're forgetting that sometimes the attitudes of certain people is just the way that they are. It's got nothing to do with you, and it's got nothing to do with other aspects of your life. Now, to give you some examples of this, the ability to just drop it and to not be too self-involved. For those of you who know the TV program The Sopranos, there's a great scene where Tony Soprano, played by the late great actor James Gandolfini, he starts having panic attacks, okay, because he's suffering from his job and there's a lot of stress. He's the mafia boss, So he starts to see a psychiatrist. Her name is Jennifer Melfi. And Melfi is trying to say to Tony that all of these struggles in his life are linked to his mother, the things that he hasn't resolved with his mother, and these are all of these psychological problems are to do with her. And Tony, he gets fed up with this kind of talk because he doesn't believe that he wants to have sex with his mother. Not that that's what Melfi is driving at, but these are very Freudian ideas. So Tony, he kind of gets in a rage and he's like, I'm sick of all of these Freudian ideas, these touchy-feely Freudian ideas. He says he's kind of sick of everyone playing the victim because of these new ideas. And he said that everyone's always constantly playing the victim and always complaining about their problems. And he's wondering where all of the Gary Coopers have gone in life. Now, Gary Cooper was an old actor who used to play these characters who were the strong, silent type. The ones that you could say they used to bottle up their emotions, but they used to just be able to drop it and move on with life and just get on with it instead of over-analyzing about life. Is this about me, or are they talking about me? Gary Cooper's characters were mainly this strong, silent type. Though Tony was ignorant in the show that these were fictional characters and not real characters that Gary Cooper was depicting, but he had a point somewhat, that we are over-analyzing life a little bit and we're making everything about ourselves, and so we lack this ability to drop things. Another great example is the show by the great comedian Jerry Seinfeld. It's his reality show called Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. Now, in one of the shows, he comes across his old pal from the great show that made him famous, Seinfeld, Michael Richards, who played the very charismatic character Kramer. Anyway, Michael Richards, after the show had finished, years had passed, and Michael Richards is a stand-up comic like Jerry, and one of his performances, he committed the great comedian crime of losing his shit on stage, and he really lost it big time. Went into a racist tirade and so forth and so on. And this experience made Michael Richards quit comedy, quit stand-up comedy, and basically you haven't really seen him since that time, and it has been a long time since this had happened, and this haunts him till this day. Anyway, on the episode, Jerry and him are having some great laughs about the past and so forth and so on, and then Michael brings up this situation, and Jerry, as a comedian, offers some great advice and even some wisdom for Michael, and he says, look, you've been carrying this baggage for so long. It's time to just drop it and let it go. It's become too heavy for your life. And sometimes when you carry something for so long, you just have to drop it. There's nothing you can do about it. It happened. And when this show had happened, it had been, I think 8 years had passed. So Michael was still holding on to that moment from 8 years ago. And I know that we live in a society that doesn't often share forgiveness with others, but you know, we need to cultivate those virtues. And Michael needed to realize also that he had just been holding on to this, been holding on to it, been clinging to it, and it was just time to really let it go. And this is what Jerry's point was, you know. So because we are like this, we have this tendency that Michael Richards has to, you know, to perpetually cling to things, to hold on to this emotional trauma we have had in the past, or these psychological problems. We often become too dramatic about our lives, you know. We all know the person who is very dramatic about their lives. They think everything is about them. They're always paranoid about certain things. They're always in self-defense. You know, we've become overly dramatic about our lives, and we haven't cultivated the ability just to, sometimes you just need to drop these certain things, okay? So, you know, this is kind of a tendency of the Hollywood generation. We often watch too many movies and we think that the way that people act on movies is the way that we should act in life. And often the case that is not true. So in the East, they have certain practices and methods to get out of this ability of being too emotional, being too dramatic, and not having the ability to just drop things in certain moments. For example, according to Zen, they would say that our mind is too sticky, okay? So everything that comes into our mind sticks like glue. They even say that we are trained to be sticky. They see that from the sticky mind, we hold on to everything. We cling to everything because of this stickiness in our mind. Every little thing, every little detail we hold on to, and then, like I said earlier, we project it onto the future as if the future is going to be exactly the same as the past, which often cases it is not. So in Zen, they offer the daily practice of zazen, which is quiet, still point sitting meditation where you face a wall, and the constant practice of mindfulness in daily life. They believe that zazen and mindfulness are the spiritual solvent for this mental glue we have in our mind, and it begins to, you know, dissolve this glue in our mind, and we begin to become more liberated and free in our life, and our mind is not stuck to certain emotional things. We just have this ability to drop it, and this is the training in Zen. It's this ability that, oh, this is not stuck in my mind. I can just drop this, whatever this emotional trauma or baggage is. And you know, even Sadhguru explained in a satsang in India once, and he was talking about who the oldest superhero in the world was, and he was saying it's not Batman, it's not Spider-Man, it's not any of these characters. The oldest superhero, supervillain I should say, in the world is Glue Man. And he mentioned Glue Man, and he means from this Zen perspective, because everything that comes into our mind sticks to our mind like glue. And he said that yoga itself is the solvent for this stickiness in our mind. Yoga itself is kind of like Glue Man's kryptonite. So, you know, we need to have these certain practices and cultivate these virtues. And when you have that, when you have this kryptonite for Glue Man, then you have this great ability to drop things like it ain't no thing, you know. And when we go into Vedanta, when we look at Vedanta, their prescription for this stickiness of our mind would be just to remain as the self, remain as the Atman. The more you remain as the self, you are constantly stepping outside of your personality and viewing it as an object. They would advocate that. And the more that you do step outside of it and view it as an object, the easier you can drop things. Someone might say something bad to you and be like, what are you going to do about it? And you just move on. You know, and it's not anything that concerns you. And it's amazing the effect that a lot of these traditions have had on India, for example. So if we look at these ancient Indian philosophies such as yoga, Vedanta, and Mahayana Buddhism, they have sunken deep into the cognition of a lot of Indian people, whether, you know, unknowingly or knowingly. This is why they have a remarkable ability to let things go quickly in India. Now, I've witnessed this a lot in India. It's an amazing thing actually when you see two Indian people, or maybe even a group of Indian people, debating or disagreeing with one another, or even trying to kill each other. And sometimes I've seen two guys arguing a lot, almost to blows, and then 5 minutes later they're sitting down having a masala chai together. There is this understanding in India from these traditions that, let's just drop it and get on with it. Kind of the Tony Soprano mindset. Let's drop it, get on with it, because life is too short to be burdened by all of this emotional problems. Okay, so the problem is, from this perspective, if you're not trained sufficiently to really be able to drop it, then this can lead to spiritual bypassing. Okay, spiritual bypassing is a term coined by psychologist John Wellwood, and spiritual bypassing is basically using spiritual teachings to suppress or trying to avoid latent pain or psychological pain we have within, things that we probably should have dealt with. Okay, so if we're not trained sufficiently to drop these things, spiritual bypassing can come to the fore. And we do see this because a lot of people in this day and age, they do follow non-dual teachings like Vedanta, for example. I've seen this in the great city of Tiruvannamalai in India, where people will follow Vedanta, but they don't follow it to its nth degree, if you know what I mean. And so you see the spiritual bypassing tendencies come to the fore. They might explode in rage, or they might be very cynical about certain things. They're unknowingly doing these things. These are very unconscious at the subconscious level, at the samskara level, and they don't realize this. So you need to be sufficiently trained in the ability to just drop it, to let things go quickly, or else you will fall into this spiritual bypassing sphere. So from the perspective of these Indian spiritual traditions that I have mentioned, if all psychological problems arise from the conditioned person, why do we not develop the ability to just observe it as a mere object? Okay, why don't we develop that ability? So to explain that, if we look at three of the great understandings of Eastern psychology, which is samskaras, which is subliminal imprints or mental impressions, vasanas, which is our habitual patterns, our latent tendencies, and karma, which is our actions, and in most cases our unconscious actions. If we begin to just observe our mind objectively, observe the conditioned person like an object, then we begin to become aware of the samskaras bubbling up to the conscious mind, which fuel our habits, our vasanas, and which often make us act unconsciously, karma. And this, if we don't observe these objectively, or just become consciously aware of them, then we constantly are in the wheel of motion, the wheel of samsara, the wheel of perpetual suffering, because we are just unconsciously acting, unconsciously thinking, and not being aware from where they naturally arise. Okay. So when you are aware of that, then things that come in to your mind that stick, the more you are aware of that, the more they lose their potency on your mind, and they don't stick as much, because you have become conscious and you can see your mind as an object, and what also makes it suffer, and also what makes it experience joy as well. So in conclusion, ask yourself these questions, okay? If your conditioned personality is temporary, why hold on to it as if it's eternal? Okay, so these great philosophies of the East would ask also, why don't you have the courage to align with the eternal within your innate being, the Atman, the self, the Purusha? Okay. So what we need to ask with those questions is, what keeps us from that recognition is actually the problem. What keeps us from that recognition is actually the problem. And you just have to drop it. And what does keep you from that recognition of the Atman within yourself, of the eternal sphere of yourself, of the eternal aspect of your being, is your personality, the personality that you've believed in, that you've given all your power away over to that sees reality very subjectively and dualistically. Okay? So the deepest aspect of the just drop it training or ability is the ability to even drop the idea of yourself. For me, it'd be to drop the idea of Jason. Let him go. It's okay. I can objectively look at him. He will continue to have his own idiosyncrasies and all of these things, but I've let go. The glue is not stuck anymore. I've got enough spiritual solvent to dissolve all of this glue within my own mind. Okay. So that's the training and the ability to just drop it that we need. And in a lot of cases we need to cultivate, because in a lot of situations it's not about us. And we need to get out of this idea that we are this certain special person, when the person itself is not that special. It's that which is within you that is connected to all that is special. Okay. So relatively, as a conditioned person in this life, you are very, very insignificant. But absolutely, in your deep down essence, your true self, the Atman, the Purusha, you are the entire universe. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Hey everybody, thank you for watching this episode of Enlightenment Today. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, please subscribe to my YouTube channel right here. Also, to watch some of my previous episodes of Enlightenment Today, click down here, okay? So thank you for watching, and let's continue to learn, grow, and love more together.